Alright, YouTube, what's up? So, here's where we are at this point. Very close to removing the engine. As you can see in the short, we're going to do away with the factory cruise control. There's no point. I don't use it, I don't want it, I don't care. It's more extra stuff that could cause problems later. Um, Pretty much what's left to do, and this won't be done until the bike's off the lift. As some of y'all might know, my back's a little racked up from a motorcycle accident in 2018 where I broke some bones, to say the least, and one of them being my back. So yeah, it's a little easier for me to have the bike up on the lift so that everything I need to do up top I could do while standing, and stuff down the bottom I could do while sitting on the milk crate. This makes my life and my back a little more happy. Um, so, as you can see, the bike's got to be on the ground to drop the exhaust, which, trust me, they're loose. We've already broke those loose. Liberal amounts of PB Blaster and, hot wrench. I soaked those down every day for a week before I even put any heat to them. Then I put heat to them, then I soaked them, and then a couple days later they broke free nice and easily. It's very easy to strip these and break them, and they're just a bitch. So those bolts come out, bolts and the mounts of the back come out, the whole exhaust drops, but that's when the bike is sitting on the ground. Frame section is ready to come out. There's two bolts on the other side. And at this juncture, I'm asking myself, do I do the hard thing and actually remove the engine to get to the stator back in there and do it, the factory way? Or do I do the often talked about poor boy conversion, which would require using this little bracket here, possibly making a bracket, but you'd use a longer bolt for your crank belt pulley, and you have to modify the cam belt cover. And you basically put a pulley on the outside of the cam belt, and you run a belt to an external automotive style alternator that you're going to hang right here. And you have to make your own tensioner. It's basically like a hack job. I'm leaning on doing the hard thing and actually pulling the engine on this bike. I really am, just because, man, I'm trying to prove that I can. It's not that hard of a job. It's just time consuming. It's like a giant puzzle. You got a million and one pieces. I fought like hell to get the dang radiator out, and I honestly may have damaged it in the process. We're going to have to pressure test that, and I put a little ding in it, so we're going to have to pressure test that and see if I actually hurt any of the fins. If I did, it's no big deal. It's not like I've never soldered a radiator before. I can do it again. As well as, I have another radiator back there, but for as much of a fight as it was to get the sucker out, I'd rather fix this one here. But I don't think I damaged it. I did put a booger in it, but I am going to pressure test it before I put it back together, because it's a fight. Let me tell you. Cam belts have been replaced somewhat recently. I don't know if you, how well you can see them. There's not much wear on them. But seriously, dude, they're not that expensive. I want to say it's like 30 bucks, maybe 40 bucks. I think we're just going to put new ones. Really no play in the bearings and tensioners. I don't like that they're this loose, but I guess that's how they're supposed to be. We got to read the manual on that, because I feel like they should be tighter. But this is the first goldwing I've actually tore into engine-wise, so this is where we're at. If you're attempting to do this yourself, what I ended up having to do to get the top radiator hose off, because it's a fight, there's no room for it in your hands, I ended up having to take the thermostat housing off, and then I could move the whole radiator down here, hold the radiator with this hand and use the other hand. And I actually had to work a screwdriver kind of up in here and break the seal, because judging by some of the bolts, this engine's been out once. I'm assuming it's not the first stator it's ever had, because just some of the engine mount bolts, the corners look like they felt a wrench at some point. So either somebody was constantly checking bolts on this bike, or they've had this engine out once. So that's where we're at, YouTube. The Phoenix Motorsports Complex. Um, yeah, what else needs to happen? This whole frame section here has got to come out. You can see it's just about ready to do just that. So once the bike hits the ground here, and we actually have to get the tarp out because, you know, poor boy, dirt floor. And we'll lay on the ground, pop them loose, drop the exhaust. And boy, it's gonna be a toughie to wiggle this engine out of here. I'm gonna have to recruit one of my weightlifter buddies, my man old Freddie, probably either Freddie or Willy Wonka. I don't want you to hurt your back, brother, but I could use your help on this. Another good buddy of mine. But yeah, that's where we're at. You got this whole bracket that's got to come out, but we're getting there slowly. With the carburetors off, I've taken the rags and soaked the end of them in just some used motor oil. Shoved them down in there. Honda uses either chrome or Nicosil coating on all their bores. I'm not too much worried about the cylinders flash rusting. It's not like it's an old small block Chevrolet, but at the same time, it is in a garage, but it's not a heated garage. At least not all the time. So I'd rather have some oily rags stuffed in the ports, and I will do the same when I drop the exhaust. But yeah, that's where we're at. Dude, if I keep going at this rate, we're looking at maybe having this bike up and running and the alternator charging. I'm going to say like 2 weeks. I work full time, so I don't have all day to do this stuff. It's just when I feel up to it in the evenings. Interesting note on the carburetors. If you follow me on Facebook, you'll know I popped open this carburetor. I didn't open them all. But this bike sat was stable. I showed you in one of the other videos. Stable ethanol fuel stabilizer. And man, it did an awesome job. The insides of these carburetors that have sat for 3 years were cleaner than these ones that were supposedly cleaned out 6 months before I pulled the bike in here. It's awesome stuff. I highly recommend it. Hopefully this weekend, if I get time between wrenching, if I do get the engine out, maybe on Sunday or so, I will actually pop these open and I'll show you a little closer, more detailed. I'm going to get a little bit of help holding the camera so that I can use both my hands here. That I'm going to confabulate some kind of little phone mount here to do this. But we're going to pop the carbs open. We're going to show you the difference between just regular pump gas that has not been treated and what it does to carburetors, and gasoline that is either non-ethanol or preferably has been treated, because I've had engines sit with non-ethanol gas in them and they did more damage in 3 years than this stuff did. But anyways, I digress. Done for the night, man. We done did a lot of work on her today and yesterday. This was a full, complete motorcycle. Yeah, she's a complicated one. There's not many shops around that actually want to work on a Honda Goldwing of this year, simply because, like, most people just ain't going to spend the money on it. Literally 3 years ago when the Stater went, I didn't have a place to do it, and I talked to one local guy who's, you know, quite a good Honda mechanic. He quoted me like $1,500, but said he wouldn't do it until the winter when he was out of work. So yeah, I can definitely see why, because my man would have taken, if he worked at it every day, probably 4 or 5 days himself. And it's definitely going to take 2 people to get the engine out. Anyways, I'll holler at y'all later. This is the progress update on the Rez Erection of Gordita Azul, my blue 1985 Honda Goldwing Interstate. Later.